Hey everyone, let's talk regulation. So I put up here a pretty complicated chart. So if you want, you can pause the video now and take a look, or you can kind of wait till the end until you've had a little bit of explanation and then kind of go through and read it for yourself. This is the polyvagal chart. And polyvagal is a psychological theory for the way that the nervous system acts or kind of functions in certain situations, right? And so you can see here in the green, we have social engagement with the words ventral vagal, and the vagal nerve uh, is a nerve. It's Latin for wanderer, I believe, but it goes from your face and your head and it goes all the way through your body down, all the way through to your lower abdomen. So the vagal nerve is responsible for kind of activating the stress response and also the what we typically consider like the rest and digest kind of nervous system functioning. So it's the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, right? All of those vital organs, they receive their signals through the vagal nerve, right? So brain takes in information, processes, sends it out through the body, and in fact, not all information even goes through the brain as a processing system. We have different parts kind of along our spine and throughout our nervous system where things just kind of like are taken in and then looped right back out to other places. Not everything goes up to the brain and back down. And that's just kind of a fun nerd fact. But so the vagus nerve has kind of these, according to polyvagal theory, has three types of functioning or existing. And the one that we think of where people are feeling calm, right? We're feeling safe, we're feeling comfortable, we're ready to get things going, right? So it's not just about being relaxed and grounded and, kind of low energy. It's really about feeling like my energy can meet the demands of the situation and I'm doing that in a way where I feel safe and comfortable, right? There's no threat, there's no need to protect myself. That's where we write poetry or create art. That's where we have, you can see here, openness, curiosity, compassion. We're feeling grounded and stable. We're feeling centered, right? We're safe, we're comfortable, we're able to be clear headed, we're able to use those executive processing functions in our brain, we're able to be mindful and in the present moment. So, this is the social engagement, that connection functioning for the vagus nerve. Once we feel a little bit of pressure, maybe we're feeling just unsafe in some way, we start to have our activation increase, right? And so that's activation of the parts of the nervous system that are responsible for fighting threats, right? So if I'm in danger, my nervous system activates and says, okay, let's manage the threat so that we can protect ourselves and stay safe and comfortable. And so ideally, we would manage a threat that comes up and then come back and then manage a threat and then come back, and ventral vagal or that green zone would be kind of our baseline or our home camp. Unfortunately, for many of us, that's just not the case. And a lot of us exist either in that red zone where we are feeling numbed out, we might dissociate, shut down, hopeless, or in that yellow zone where we feel really anxious, worried, on edge, uptight, just kind of like stressy, honestly. Like that's kind of our stress zone. So once we get activated, we feel things like panic, fear, anxiety, worry. That's when we go into defensive mode, right? So when my fight or flight is activated, it's no longer, oh, yes, let's collaborate for resolution. It's, I'm not feeling safe. I'm going to do what I need to do to feel safe again, right? And our safety, if you look at, I like to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety is our baseline need. If safety is not satisfied, then the things that come above safety in the hierarchy, which include our relationships, are not the top priority. So if we feel like our safety is threatened, that takes priority over maintaining a healthy relationship or a good connection. So part of what we're working toward is not associating a conflict or a difficult discussion with a safety issue. Being able to maintain a sense of safety in the relationship or safety in ourselves and still have a conversation of, I didn't like when you did this, or it makes me feel unheard. We have this, challenge in our relationship. How are we going to come together as a team and solve it? Right? Being able to face these challenges from a place of safety is so, so important because then we come at it from the green zone where we have this connection and we have this mindset of compassion and kindness and we have the availability to approach situations in this way versus when we come at it from the yellow zone where it's a safety issue and we say, I need to get rid of this safety issue. So then we end up, maybe saying mean things or, doing something that we might regret or sabotaging the relationship in some way. So that's the yellow zone where we can feel anger, irritation, frustration, right? We're activated in that way versus the red zone, right? That's even more activated, right? That's when we go into almost an overwhelm, right? This is too much. I can't take it. And we start to shut down. You can see here some words: freeze, collapse, immobility, and conservation of energy, right? So it's kind of like a turtle that goes into its shell, right? I can't handle it's too unsafe out here. I'm going to draw back into myself and I'm going to stay there, right? So again, we feel things trapped, helpless, hopeless, numb, dissociation, right? Again, not the recipe for a really great connective experience. So it's really important to kind of notice what triggers or activates that kind of reaction in us. And then also how we can move ourselves back through sympathetic, right? Reactivating, re energizing our system to then come back into the green zone, right? And according to polyvagal, you would never go straight from the red zone into the green zone. You would always have to come through yellow because the red zone is a shutting down of energy. And so the first thing you do is put some energy into the system and then organize the energy. So you can kind of think of the green zone as organized energy, the yellow zone as chaotic energy, and then the red zone as a shutting down or a lack of energy. Okay, so green, yellow, red. In order to regulate, we're going to check in with our nervous system and say, okay, nervous system, how are you feeling and what do you need? Right? So you're identifying where you are in your regulation and then what you need, if anything, to come into the green or to bring in more green. So it might be different practices. Well, it's going to be different practices for different people. For me, one of the things that brings in some ventral energy for myself is to sit outside and watch or listen to the birds, to do some yoga, to drink some coffee, right? These are things that are all really regulating for me. I have some breath practices that I really like. I have some breath to movement practices that I really like when I'm feeling kind of in dorsal vagal and I need to bring in some movement, right? So you can ask yourself and you can start to notice how you feel during certain activities, right? And then you can say, oh, I'm feeling chaotic energy. What's something that I can do to help organize my energy? And journaling is sometimes a really great way to organize the energy because it forces you to slow down. And when you translate thoughts into words, there's a natural organization that happens because we have to say, okay, I have all these thoughts and feelings. How am I going to put that into words and sentences? And so that's kind of a natural organizational activity. And so that can be really helpful to bring in some journaling there as well. All right. So that's personal regulation. How can I regulate myself? What does regulation look like? And then when you add kind of another person in there, when you say, okay, relationships, co regulation is when one person is regulated and another person is dysregulated. And the regulated person helps to bring the dysregulated person back into regulation. And what does regulated versus dysregulated mean? Well, typically the yellow and red zones we refer to as dysregulated, and then green is regulated, right? That's in simple form the way that we talk about that. And again, regulated doesn't necessarily mean calm, it just means that my energy matches the situation. So if I'm outside running around playing with the kids, right, I don't want like super like low vibe, relaxed, calm energy. I need to be able to have that energy to be able to play, right? Play is a ventral vagal activity where we have some of that chaotic energy from sympathetic, right? And so there can be overlap. So when we bring ventral into sympathetic, we get some things like play. Or when we bring a ventral into the dorsal vagal or the freeze, that's when we might feel something like a deep meditation, right? And so it's stillness, it's low energy, but it has this ventral vagal energy of safety and comfort and mindfulness, right? And so that's just kind of a little note on how some of those things can overlap and work together. So when we help to regulate another person, we are regulated, right? I'm regulated, you're dysregulated, or you're regulated and I'm dysregulated. And our nervous systems are in constant communication at the subconscious level. So when I'm around somebody, think about it, you're around somebody, you know how they're feeling, right? You feel if something's a little off or if they're calm, if they're worried, right? We can feel these things. And sometimes if somebody is like really stressed out and they're like on edge and tense, it can make us feel a little tense, right? Because their nervous system is sending us a neuroception of threat. And a neuroception is perception at the neurological level, right? So I'm perceiving that their nervous system is feeling threatened. And so my nervous system is saying, well, if you're feeling threatened, then there must be a threat that I should also be aware of. So we get a neuroception or a subconscious perception from our nervous system that there is either threat or we can get a neuroception of safety. So when we co regulate, we need to be in the ventral vagal area, the green zone, so that we can send out neuroceptions of safety. And we can do that with, well, our nervous system is going to do it automatically. And then we can also bring in some conscious regulation practices through physical touch, words, maybe singing or humming, whatever is regulating for the other person. So just like how we said that my own regulation practices are going to be different from yours. I like birds, you might hate birds. The same is going to be true for another person. And when we're trying to co regulate, we need to use the regulation practices that work for the other person, so long as they are still regulating for us, because we don't want to pull ourselves out of regulation trying to regulate someone else. That just is a recipe for not working well. So, this involves some communication. You might also be able to feel if something's working or not working. So, it does kind of take a little bit of trial and error. And if the person's really insightful, you might even be able to have a conversation about this outside of a co-regulation attempt. So let's say both of you, are feeling fairly regulated, you're just like having a nice dinner together. This might be a good topic of conversation, believe it or not. Like when you're feeling upset or when you're feeling anxious or stressed or, depressed. You can use those words if you want, or you can use other words. How would you like for me to help you? Is it helpful when I X? Is it helpful when I rub your shoulder? Is it helpful when I invite you to come on a walk with me? Is it helpful when I bring you a snack? Is it, whatever it is that you do or want to do to be able to re regulate them, you can have a conversation about what works and what doesn't work. And that's a way to create shared meaning, to create bond, to invite connection, and to be sure that you're really able to support each other in ways that matter most. All right, so that's the end. You, feel free to pause the video if you want to keep looking at the polyvagal chart. But other than that, I'm wishing you peace, comfort, and connection, and I'll see you soon.